Hello, my name is Zoe Olivo, a mental health counselor here at Counseling of El Paso, and I have the honor of presenting Jazmine Silva, a licensed professional counselor, in today's heart-to-heart conversation. Today's heart-to-heart conversation is dedicated to affairs and relationships. Because of the nature of the topics that will be brought up today, we want to invite you to take the time you need to process this information, pause the conversation, take a break, and continue at your own pace if you wish to do so. Please be mindful of how you're feeling about the topic and address whatever you may need at that moment. And before we begin, I do want to provide this ethical disclaimer. This heart-to-heart conversation is not meant to replace any form of counseling, consultation, or supervision. If you believe you would benefit from counseling services, consultation, or supervision, please consult with a licensed professional. The purpose of the heart-to-heart conversation is to provide mental health awareness and education to the community. So please keep in mind that we are using a public forum and that you may engage if you wish to do so. But please keep in mind that this platform is not private nor confidential. Now, without further ado, let me introduce Jazmine. Jazmine is a licensed professional counselor and a registered play therapist here at Counseling of El Paso. She has both a counseling and a teaching heart, and prior to entering the counseling profession, she was actually a third grade dual language teacher at Escarate Elementary for 5 years. Her profession, education, and postgraduate work inspired her at a personal level to pursue the field of counseling. Jazmine graduated with a master's in science in mental health counseling from UTEP's mental health program, CAPE and CACAP accredited in May 2018. Currently, she works at Counseling of El Paso, like I mentioned, where she serves adults, couples, teens, children, and their families. Jazmine has received training from various therapeutic modalities such as eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, also known as EMDR, level 1 and 2 training in Gottman method couples therapy, and motivational interviewing. She is passionate about learning, growing, and building better relationships. So let's get started into the topic. I think the best place to start would maybe be, how would you define an affair?
Well, thank you so much, Zoe. I appreciate you very much. Absolutely, we'll go ahead and get started. It's an honor to be interviewed and be able to share this important topic and be able to start with the definition of an affair. So basically, the way I'm going to be addressing these concepts I want to share is based on my training, the one that I've received from the Gottman method. And I will be using a lot of the modalities that they use based on their research, based on their definition. So I'm going to use some of the research and findings that they have shared. I just want to clarify, disclaimer, I'm not a certified Gottman therapist. However, I have received those foundational levels that allows me to know some items that I feel comfortable enough to share with the community. And then here we go. So basically, the way we define an affair is basically it's a rupture of trust and commitment by one of the partners in a relationship. So basically what happens in here is that the relationship, in this case, we're talking about a relationship where two individuals have defined a commitment in the relationship, and they have closed the relationship just for them to be involved and nobody else to be involved. And the rupture occurs when there's a breach of that commitment, and it creates a rupture in what both individuals, or at least one of the individuals, had defined as the trust in the relationship. There are different types of affairs that I'd like to be able to point out. Basically, there are emotional, physical, and romantic. These are important because a lot of the times when affairs are suspected or brought up, sometimes individuals have hesitation. Does this meet the criteria? Does this not? Is it or is it not? So basically, there are three types. So emotional might not constitute physical. It means that there has been another person involved where there is an emotional connection. There is maybe feelings of fondness, admiration, maybe even fantasies of being with the other person and leaving the person that they're with. That's a form of emotional affair. The physical component is where obviously it might not be an emotional component, but it is the physical one. And then the romantic one combines both. There is both a connection with another individual that is both emotional and physical. Um, I do want to share on this note that it does matter also how the couple has defined the commitment, but how they have defined affairs also as well. That's an important conversations couples must have. Everybody is different and unique in what comfort levels it might have, let's say involving friendships. Let's say there is a friendship that is very important for someone that would have to be clearly defined between both members of the relationship to be able to determine when does it go beyond maybe a friendship, and then it might turn into an emotional affair. I do want to give a little caveat when it comes to friendships. There is a potential for abuse. So what I mean by potential of abuse is isolating someone from people or friends that they're normally with. So there has to be a fine line, and this would be through conversations and discussions with the couple to be able to determine to what degree is this friendship beneficial to the relationship, beneficial to the person who's friends with this other person, and then being able to clearly define if it goes beyond this point of a friendship, then this I would consider a form of affair, but being careful that it's not going to end up isolating the person from all the friendships and family that normally would be important, because there's a fine line between jealousy turning into abuse, but then um possibly another person being involved and turning into an affair, an emotional affair, but at the same time considering that there's also healthy boundaries that can be exist when there's other friends involved as well. So it just matters what the couple agrees on, and that's through a lot of consent, a lot of conversations.
No.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for defining an affair. I know that with all the information that is being provided nowadays, it's very important that we define that and have something clear and concise to go by to make a
That's right.
definition of our own. So I do want to ask, are there any interesting statistics on affairs?
Yes, there are. So, according to the APA, there was a study, I think, back in 2014, where they reported or they were trying to identify what were the common reasons for divorce. And what they found is that about 20 to 40% affairs were the primary reason for the separation or
Wow.
divorce. So that was back in 2014, at least from that finding. It'd be interesting to see what it would be now, especially
Absolutely.
with all the changes that we've gone through before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and afterwards as well. There's also another psychotherapist, Shirley Glass, who conducted her own research, that she specialized in treating couples who had experienced affairs. And one of the things that she found based on her statistics and her own research findings is that about 46% of women will have met their partner, their their ex- their the partner that is not in that committed relationship in the workplace, and about 62% of men will find the other partner, will meet the other partner in the workplace. And then she also found that about 82% of affairs start out with social acquaintances, neighbors, workplace, certain friends, not all friends. But this was an interesting piece, at least from her findings. She does have a book called Not Just Friends, and that's a book that is really recommended a lot by the Gottman Institute for couples to read if they're trying to address any relationship wounding and healing that might have come about from an affair.
Absolutely. And I guess like a leading question with the affair partner is people taking place, like having a relationship outside of the committed relationship. What are your thoughts on maybe open relationships, or now that's being said as consensual non-monogamy?
Consensual non-monogamy. Okay, perfect. So basically with this, what we're talking about, It would just depend on what the agreements are in an open
Mhm.
or a consensual non-monogamous relationship. So one of the things basically with what I'm sharing is based on a monogamous between two individuals.
Mhm.
So, however, with open relationships, it just depends on the agreements that have been made and above all, the consent as to what is it that they are agreeing to, what will be okay and what will not be okay. But this topic in itself, like what we're addressing, would a lot of the things wouldn't be applicable for
Oh,
open relationships based on the agreements. If there are boundaries, if there are rules that say, this is not going to be okay, then some of these elements might be applicable if there it feels as if there was a rupture. That's what
mhm.
matters. If there was a
Absolutely.
rupture in the commitment that was made or the trust that was
Mhm.
provided. That's an important element.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering those questions. I think what I'm next curious about is like, what do we look for? What should a person be aware of when it comes to an affair? What are the signs?
So basically, when it comes to this, every relationship, every person is unique and every situation is different. So that will vary from relationship to relationship. What I normally do suggest, or what are the signs that would be that a person who is either suspecting of an affair to look for, are behaviors that are objective, observable, measurable. These would be important elements. And when we talk about this, maybe for emotional affairs, it might be very difficult to be able to define. And a very simple way of maybe even to be able to explore this and elaborate is maybe by having an open and honest conversation with a partner and asking directly, do you have feelings for this other person? What type of feelings do you have for this person? And being able to then now have observable, measurable information that allows you to be able to understand what is the nature of the relationship, whether it is just platonic, a friendship, or there's something else beyond that.
Mhm.
So basically, the signs can be very different. And we're going to go back to the same point as to it depends on what the couple has defined as the do's and don'ts in a relationship, whether it's certain types of messaging, certain types of phone calls, certain types of communication, certain types of gathering or meetings or outside, whether the person was aware of it. That's what would matter at this point, to see what the couple has agreed as this would constitute an affair in the
Mhm.
relationship. So as long as not on this other element that I was talking about earlier of abuse, of power of
Mhm.
control of the other person, if it was agreed and consensual, then those are the things that the person can look for.
Okay. I guess my next question would be, what are some common responses that someone might be experiencing when they suspect an affair?
Well, I want to really, really be sensitive to everything of this conversation, but this part is an important one because every person is so unique and so different, and the way it may show up can look very different. Some people might be completely blindsided, never thought about it, never crossed their mind, never even had a doubt or a suspicion that something like that would happen. So, for individuals who never suspected it, might be denial, shock, disbelief, blindsided, baffled by the whole situation. If somebody is already suspecting, a lot of the times it will increase a lot of anxiety. There will be a lot of worry, nervousness about the future, about the present. In some situations, especially if they have made attempts to talk about it with their partner, they might have feelings of distress, restlessness, or hypervigilance because they might be suspecting it, and they might have some of that measurable, observable, objective behaviors that help them be able
Mhm.
to say, hey, this is not meeting the agreement we made when we initially made our commitment for the relationship. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
hypervigilance, meaning we're not sure if something is going to go wrong, if we're going to end up finding out like right now or the next step that comes up. In certain cases, the worry and the anxiety can be so severe, the distress, that it can impact our daily functioning. Being able to sleep, being able to practice self-care, going to work, being able to be in the present, here and now, even just socializing with friends and family and so on. Those are some of the common responses when we're suspecting.
Okay. And how about common responses when discovering and even confirming an affair?
Correct. This is an important one because the previous question is about, well, what happens when somebody is suspecting? It's not yet
Mhm.
confirmed, right? However, when it is once discovered or confirmed, whether the partner confesses or comes clean about the affair, reveals, I think that's a better word,
Reveals.
reveals.
Mhm.
um Every person, like I shared, is very unique and very different, but these are some common feelings that people might have or responses. Like I mentioned earlier, even if the person was suspecting, they were wondering, they may still experience shock and disbelief, because even though there
Mhm.
might be suspicion, there's still a part of them that might wish, I hope this isn't true. I hope this isn't true. I hope I'm wrong about this. So there is the feelings of denial also as well that can come with shock. Um, I really like something that Dr. Julie Gottman explains, and she explains that a lot of the times when a partner discovers an affair, because of the level of rupture in the relationship, they may experience trauma-like symptoms. In her specific words, she describes PTSD-like symptoms. So basically, it can be from nightmares, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, recurrent thoughts, a lot of hypervigilance, a deep sense of distrust, mistrust in relationships, negative beliefs about ourselves, not wanting to connect, avoiding certain things, levels of aggression in some cases, or numbness, not feeling anything at all. Of course, there is anger, blame. In some cases, people might feel they blame themselves or blame the whole situation that's going on. I will say that there are a lot of feelings of shame that come up. It's very, very somatic when that occurs. And something very important is that not only is there that feeling of the betrayal, the hurt that is associated with it too, but there's also feelings of grief. Grief is an
Mhm.
important part of some of the responses that occur because it's the loss of who we thought we knew. It's the loss of the relationship we believed we had. It's the loss of, even in some cases, the dreams and the hopes and the vision we had about the future too. For some individuals, depending on how everybody process things, maybe they might experience a lot of somatic complaints, meaning a lot of body
Mhm.
concerns, shortness of breath, tension in their body, lots of headaches and migraines, a lot of restlessness, maybe even anxiety showing up in the stomach, and items like those. So, mhm.
Mhm. Okay. No, thank you so much for addressing those. I think there is a good distinction between the suspecting and actually discovering or revealing the affair. And so I think it is good to be aware of some of the things and that even normalize that experience, as it can be very shocking and
That's
very
right.
harmful. Um,
Absolutely.
so now that we kind of talked already about the responses to kind of expect or even experience, how should someone address the suspected or revealed affair?
Right. So, for example, in this scenario, let's say the partner did not reveal the affair, and one of the partners is now confirming because they have enough evidence, they have measurable, objective, observable behavior, or maybe was through a conversation that it revealed that somebody else was involved other than themselves. And basically, the most important element in those cases is to be able to talk about this, confront the partner would be a priority. And an important way of doing so would be, granted, this I want to be very, very mindful. It depends on the context or the situation. We just talked about earlier, maybe being shocked or blindsided by it.
Mhm.
So that might be the initial response. But we're talking now about, let's say, you had an opportunity to be able to process some of the emotions before confronting the partner, then you want to prepare yourself by going and talking to the person and the partner and being able to confront them about it. So normally you want to have open-ended questions. These questions are important. The type of questions will vary on the person too. Uh, the thing that we do always normally ask, and that's important, is being intentional about what we ask. Earlier, we were talking about how a lot of the symptoms that we might experience afterwards in processing, just trying to understand the affair in itself, can lead to a lot of trauma-like symptoms. And this is where we want to be intentional about the types of questions that we want to ask. The reason for it is because as the partner is answering, it may create a mental image in our mind. We can almost perhaps even create a movie of what the details that we're learning about. So that's where we want to be very mindful. If is the information that I'm seeking helpful, or is it going to be harmful for me? So that would be an important element for us to be
Mhm.
able to consider. So normally open-ended questions might be like, how long has this been going on? Um, uh, uh, can you tell me about what led to this in the first place?
Mhm.
Is there anything else I should be aware of? Like very open-ended questions that would help, above all, the individual to be able to make an informed decision, but also be able to process it as best as possible, the whole idea of what just happened.
Mhm.
I
Absolutely.
I will share with you just an important caveat
Mhm.
in regards to the other partner that was involved, or in other cases, sometimes other partners that were involved. Um, there is a caveat of in this matter to be very cautious about about confronting the other person. The reason for it is because in certain cases, I'm not saying in all, the other partner might not be aware of the whole situation to begin with. And then in some cases, if there isn't sufficient concrete evidence, it might lead to a confrontation of someone and it escalate to a situation where there were no grounds. So that's an important element. So
Mhm.
basically, what I want to invite in this is to be able to see the one who made the commitment of trust in the relationship. That's who we need to go and address this, because that's the person who created the rupture in the relationship. At least in these beginning
Mhm.
stages, everyone processes information differently. For some individuals, it is important to be able to talk to the other partner and be able to have a conversation about it in certain situations, not all, I will say. For some people, it's important to be able to have that other side. But I will say, at least not in the initial stages, it's best to go to the person who made that formal commitment, and trust for the relationship to begin with.
Absolutely. And that is an important caveat because if they are not aware that they were even in a relationship, that can cause even more issues. And you just want to maintain it within the original relationship, at least in the beginning. So we kind of
Yes.
talked about how to address the affair with a partner, but what happens next?
This is a very important question. I will not pretend that these conversations are easy to have. None of this is easy. In fact, it's very painful and it's very difficult, um, for the partner to go through it, and in some cases for both to go through it as well. So basically, in this case, we're referring to both individuals have options. I do want to clarify that both individuals, even the one who caused the affair, does have an option whether to stay or not. but so is the one who experienced the rupture in the relationship. So basically, one question that is an important question to reflect on. Let's say the partner who engaged in the rupture does want to work on the relationship, but now the person who experienced the rupture is contemplating, well, how do I go about this? What are my options? And this is an important reflection, and I will not pretend to know the answer to this. Only the person can know this because it will vary on so many important variables. But is the relationship worth saving? Is the relationship worth saving? This matters because the individual does have a right to be able to make an informed decision. And this will be based on the individual's values, perspectives. For some individuals, it does matter the type of affair as well. The frequency, how everything was interpreted, the meaning, and even the decision-making system. So basically, how does the person normally make decisions? Do they base decisions on needs, on values, on there's also the religious or faith perspectives as well. So a lot of those elements matter as well. It's not black and white. In fact, it's very, 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 very varied in the shades of what will help a person make this decision. Some individuals may need to take some time to make a decision. Some individuals may decide that this is where I need to part ways, or some individuals will decide, let's work on this. We'll work through it. And every decision, every way that a couple decides to handle the situation is important, and I do believe in respecting and honoring whatever the individuals feel that would be best for them, and then also for the relationship, because it goes back, is a relationship worth saving? And here the person will do an analysis, a cost benefit analysis. How much in retrospect has this relationship benefit me, but how much is it costing me? Again, that's a very personal and unique answers that will come up for every individual.
Absolutely. It is very much a case by case answer, really. So now that since we've talked about that decision making and also about the impact it has on a person, what are some recommendations that you have to help someone heal after confirming or revealing an affair?
This is also an important question for sure. What I'll share with you is that um, as a child and family therapist, as I identify, I will say that an important element is to be able to protect the children,
Mhm.
if there are children involved. So in this situation, it will matter to make sure that we're not disclosing information that is appropriate for adults but inappropriate for children. Because one of the things that is important is that the children will experience the rupture too, as well. And it will be very difficult for them to try to gather and understand such an abstract concept that might be difficult for them to just process for them.
Mhm.
And it can lead to a lot of harm for them as well, whether they blame themselves or they start worrying a lot about the parents and things like that. There are limits in regards to this. There are things there that, depending on situations, can constitute even certain types of abuse or domestic violence. Let's say in disputes or arguments, it escalates in the household. There are lines where children need to be protected, and it's no longer a matter of a preference, but it's a need. They have to be
Mhm.
protected as well. Um, and that's an important element for that. The other recommendation for sure will be to have a support system. In some cases, what happens is that there, like we talked about earlier, there's a lot that can come up, a lot of feelings, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. However, we want to find a support system, friends or family who we feel comfortable being able to talk to, who won't have any judgment, not even for the partner, but will be open and be available to be able to provide validation and support, because this can be very difficult to process. And this is something that alone can be very, very hard as
Mhm.
well. And I will share with you on this note, an element for if, let's say, we are providing support to somebody who just experienced an affair or they're processing it. One important item is to listen and listen. But also, if we're going to give any advice or suggestions, above all, to ask for permission. It might be something like, is it okay if I share with you a piece of advice, or can I share with you my perspective? The reason this matters is because a lot of the times when we want to treat it like just like we would treat grief, we want to be very sensitive and mindful about where the person might be. The other element is a lot of self-care. Like we talked about earlier, the one item that might get injured is like our daily functioning, just taking care of ourselves. But for this, we want to make sure that we're still keeping a routine. If we were going to the gym and exercising, we're still practicing that, making sure that we're still prioritizing as much as possible our sleep, and making sure that we're taking care of all the things that nourished us, that we're still nourishing ourselves even while we're processing afterwards. The maintaining the routine, that would be very important. And in some cases, individuals really might benefit from individual counseling, individual therapy, psychotherapy, a safe space where they can process things without any judgment, and to be safe completely, that they can talk about what has happened in a safe way too. In some cases, if the individual if in the partners have made a decision to try to work on the relationship, couples counseling definitely can be very helpful, to be able to maybe stabilize and be able to process things. Um, these are some of the things that come up.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I have a question going off of the
Mm.
couples counseling, because I understand that people often may have ideas of couples counseling and what a couples counselor can do. And I guess, could a couples counselor make a decision on whether or not the couple stays together?
Ooh, that's an important question. No, they cannot. So a couples counselor role will be there. The benefit is for the dyad, as we call it, for the relationship. And that is a very important decision that a therapist, a counselor, a couples counselor wouldn't be able to make, whether they stay or not. A couples
Mhm.
counselor does have an ethical obligation to be able to determine if couples counseling is appropriate or not.
Mhm.
However, it isn't about whether they stay together or not. Those are two different things. In situations where the couple has to determine that, that would be client autonomy. So they have a right to make their own decisions based on that. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the main questions I have. I don't know if there's any information that maybe we've missed or anything you would like to add.
Yeah, something just came up to my mind. I will share with you that an important element to consider is on the partner who was involved on the rupture. I wanted to share how important honesty and transparency is
Mhm.
in these beginning stages when the affair is confirmed or revealed. What sometimes can occur is, if I'm honest, I'm only gonna hurt more or injure more.
Mhm.
Granted, there's a fine line between being maybe not maybe being cruel with what we're saying, but also being honest. So cruelty will be demeaning, humiliating, causing shame, negative messaging towards the person. But honest, yes, I was with it and so forth, or whatever the narrative is, that would matter. And I will share with you that the honesty and transparency will be very important because, like Dr. Gottman explains, the whole foundation of the first relationship was obliterated. And
Mhm.
now the new relationship will need to be reestablished. But before even we can consider a new relationship, the, it has to build the we has to be built on honesty and transparency as well. And I
Mhm.
will share with you that another thing that comes up is trying to explain why it happened. I want to put a little sensitivity component to that because sometimes talking about, well, it's because you did this and you did that, and that's why I went with this other person might not be the time and place to be trying to explain that because the person who experienced the affair is just trying to process everything and trying to understand or internalize that they had something to do with it or they had contributed to the disconnection is not the timing for that. And there's a lot of layers that go into it beyond that as well. So those are some elements that I just wanted to share as well that I think are important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that is a good disclaimer because that is something that people want to kind of know, like, well, why did this happen?
What?
What led to this affair occurring? And it's definitely about that hurt being processed before they can understand the why.
Correct. And it's not the why is not that simple. That's the other
Mhm.
thing that there are so many layers and nuances that it might take a little bit of time to even be able to get to a meaning making why that would make sense for both the individuals in the relationship. Um, However, first is processing the grief, the loss, being able to stabilize the feelings of the betrayal, as some people consider it, um,
Mhm.
and then being able to maybe reconstruct a new meaning if that's the direction. Or if not, being able to process it and reconstruct a new different meaning for whatever the situation ends up being.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jasmine. Any
No,
other additions?
no,
More
that's all.
information? Okay, well, thank you so much for talking with me today about this very important topic. I think it provided a lot of information, I'm sure not just to the community, but definitely to me. Um, as far as to any listeners that we have, if you all would like to contact our office for more information, you can please visit our website at counselingofelpaso.com or call our office at 915-209-1234.
Excellent. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Zoe.
Of course. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.